On February 23, 2021, inside a house in Dundee, an attack unfolds right in the kitchen. A young woman is struck in the head with a hammer, then a long knife is used. All of it is witnessed by a 7-year-old child. The body is wrapped in construction bags, a tarp, and a blanket. The floor is taken apart. The concrete is broken. A cavity beneath the kitchen has been prepared in advance. There is still a 2-year-old child in the house. She is alive. She remains there for several days after the attack. During those days, sexual abuse takes place. Then, another death, and another body beneath the same floor. A 25-year-old woman arrives in the United Kingdom from the Philippines, and on February 20th, she stops responding to messages. On March 1st, the woman and 2 children are reported missing. On March 5th, the police arrive at the house, and what they find is a horrifying scene.
These are amongst the very worst crimes which have come before the High Court of Justiciary.
This is probably one of the most horrific cases that I and my team have been involved in. The National Crime Agency described this as a once-in-a-generation crime, and I sincerely hope that no one else sees this ever again.
This is not a random murder. It's cold calculation, systematic lies, and violence that began with an online acquaintance. I assure you, this story will bring you to tears. Let's just go back to the very beginning so you can experience this story with me. 25-year-old Benny Lynn Aquino was originally from the Philippines. She was incredibly popular, easy to talk to, and deeply loved by everyone around her. Her sister, Shella Aquino, said she didn't know a single person who didn't like Benny Lynn. Benny Lynn was determined to get an education, and Shella worked to support her while she studied. Their father, Benedicto Aquino, remembered how the entire family came together to help her and make sure she finished school. She was described as smart, kind, beautiful, and dependable. She genuinely cared about her family, and her brother recalled how she used to protect him from bullies. In 2015, she met a British man named Lexington Burke on a dating site. A relationship quickly grew between them, and after he traveled to the Philippines, the couple got married in a large wedding in Samar on July 28, 2018. Just a month later, on August 19th, their first child was born, a baby girl named Jellica. On Jellica's first birthday, the family moved to the United Kingdom. It was the first time Benny Lynn had ever left the Philippines, and she truly believed a brighter future was waiting for her in the UK. While living there, she worked hard and regularly sent money back home to support her family in the Philippines. But by the end of 2020, the marriage had begun to fall apart, and Benny Lynn moved into temporary accommodation, a ground-floor apartment in Kingswood, about 3 miles from Bristol. In that social housing community, she found support, including from a group known as Mums in Bath, who helped her with food and essentials. Members of the group visited her, as did friends from Bristol. People genuinely wanted to surround her with care and support. Even though the marriage had broken down, she and Lexington agreed on custody arrangements for Jellica. Toward the end of February 2021, Lexington tried several times to contact Benny Lynn, but got no response. She didn't reply to messages and didn't answer calls. He even left a note in her mailbox, but there was still no reply. Social services also reached out to him, asking if he had heard from her, because they couldn't get in touch and she had missed a scheduled appointment. That wasn't like her at all. When his concern reached a breaking point, he went to the police. On March 1st, Benny Lynn, Jellica, and another child, a 7-year-old, were officially reported missing. It's important to note that case materials mention this 7-year-old girl, but later sources suggested she may have been Benny Lynn's older daughter. Her name and any identifying details have not been made public, as the law requires her identity to be protected. Throughout this story, she is referred to as Jane Doe. Avon and Somerset police launched an investigation and quickly developed a lead. A vehicle had been tracked traveling into Gloucestershire around the time they were last seen, then heading back north and crossing the border into Scotland. CCTV cameras captured the driver refueling at a gas station. Investigators reached out to Scottish authorities for help locating the vehicle. The car was registered to a man named Andrew Innes, who had come from Dundee to pick them up. Despite the time difference between the Philippines and the United Kingdom, Shella and Benny Lynn always made time to talk and stayed in close contact. Just before all 3 of them disappeared, on Thursday, February 18th, Benny Lynn spoke with her sister over video call. She was in Andrew's car, and they were all driving towards Scotland. Shella asked to see him, and Benny Lynn turned the camera, showing the man behind the wheel. There were no travel bags in sight. It was clear this wasn't supposed to be a long trip. A few days after her arrival in Scotland, Shella grew worried when Benny Lynn stopped replying to messages. On Saturday, February 20th, knowing Benny Lynn was with Andrew, she sent him 2 messages. "Hi, hello sir, what happened to my sister?" The next day, she finally got a reply. "It's a bit of a long story, but don't worry, she's fine." Shella wrote back right away, "What happened to my sister, sir? Please, just tell me." Andrew Innes responded, "I met her on a dating site and we'd been talking for a long time. Then I went to see her. Where is she now?" Shella asked. "In Glasgow. She didn't tell me her full story before. It was only last weekend that I found out I thought she was already divorced. But it seems like she wasn't completely honest with me about that." He said he would drop her off at the cafe. Glasgow with another man she met online whom he didn't know. He claimed that Benny Lynn wanted to hide at his place because Lexington wanted to get custody of Jellica and push for deportation, Benny Lynn from the country. He told Shella that Benny Lynn was safe and that he advised her to get rid of her phone if she wanted to hide from the authorities. Sheila begged to let her talk to Benny Lynn, but he refused. "I think she'll reach out to you once she gets settled." After that, they exchanged a few more messages. Shella wrote, "Sir, can you please tell me that my sister is alive?" Andrew Innes replied, "Scotland is a very peaceful place. We barely have any crime here. Please don't worry. I'm sure your sister is fine." 4 days later, Shella messaged him again. He told her that another gentleman from a cafe had contacted him, saying they were settling into their new life well, adding, "She's happy she found a good man, and she feels incredibly relieved knowing her child won't be taken away." Andrew then said he wanted to bring everything to an end and claimed he would delete all of his digital data, saying, "Not just to protect myself, but to protect her too, so the police won't be able to find her if they search my house." Shella asked him to send a video of Benny Lynn Aquino to prove she was safe, and he sent her a clip. She replied, "I hope we'll still be able to talk again someday, sir." He answered, "Maybe one day we will, when everything settles down." The video he sent to Shella was actually an old recording. At 3:20 p.m. on March 5th, police were dispatched to 21 Tron Avenue. It was at this address that the car was registered. This was the home of 50-year-old Andrew Innes. The car was parked in the yard. There was also a construction dumpster filled with trash, containing various items. Among them were mattresses and debris. After a knock at the door, Andrew opened it, but only slightly, and spoke with the police officer right on the doorstep. He refused to let the officers into the house, saying that he was in isolation, and his daughter had just come out of the bath and needed to get dressed. Through the crack, the police officers saw Jane Doe, who was fully dressed inside the house. They had a bad feeling and realized that something was wrong. They insisted that he let them inside. When the officers entered the house, they described it as a complete mess. It seemed that renovations were underway there. Kitchen utensils were lying on the stairs, and the stove and kitchen cabinets had been dismantled. Jane Doe was sitting in the living room watching cartoons. One of the officers spoke with her. She confirmed that Andrew was not her father and that they had no familial relationship. During questioning, Andrew Innes said he had driven Benny Lynn Aquino and Angelica to Glasgow and left them at a cafe with a man he claimed he didn't know. He insisted he hadn't seen them since. The police didn't believe his story. They knew they had to get to the truth, and what he said next completely shocked the officers. "I killed her. She's under the floor. We argued, and I killed her. But where was Jellica?" "Under the floor with her mom. I couldn't take care of the child. The child was crying." After that chilling confession, Andrew Innes was arrested and taken into custody. Jane Doe was also removed and placed somewhere safe. The following day, on March 6th, he was formally charged with the murders of Benny Lynn and Angelica, and now the police needed to find their bodies. As news of the horrific crime began to spread, local residents left flowers and toys in memory of Benny Lynn and Angelica along Troon Avenue. While the search for their bodies continued, investigators began piecing together the timeline. Benny Lynn had been using a dating site called Filipino Cupid as she was looking for a relationship and support. That's where she met 50-year-old Andrew Innes. At first, their messages were casual and friendly, but over time they moved into video calls. Then the tone started to shift. He asked her to send an intimate photo, but she refused. He then offered her a job as a public relations manager, along with money for working for him, and even promised to provide her with housing. She replied, "If you want to hire me, I can work in Bristol." On February 12th, they agreed to meet. After the meeting was arranged, Andrew Innes made several internet searches about murder rates in Scotland, as well as what is chloroform used for and underfloor storage space. Despite strict COVID-19 travel restrictions, he drove from Dundee to England to meet her in Kingswood, a journey of over 400 miles. She felt sorry for him because he was sleeping in his car, unable to check into a hotel, and he wasn't allowed to stay in her accommodation. Benny Lynn had always wanted to see Scotland and its beauty, so she agreed to go with him and spend the weekend at his home. There were several photos taken of Benny Lynn and Angelica in Dundee, where they were sightseeing and walking around the city, along with photos of Andrew Innes himself. On February 23rd, he was seen buying gravel and tools for repairs, and the next day, a construction container was delivered to the house. The task facing the officers was enormous. They brought in forensic experts, as well as anthropologists, archaeologists, and geologists to verify whether what he said was true. It took the police 2 weeks to dig up the house, but they found that Andrew Innes had not lied. On March 19th, at a depth of about 3 feet, the bodies of Angelica and Benny Lynn were found. In the Philippines, Shella received a phone call. It was Lexington, Benny Lynn's ex-husband. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, and it was up to her to break the terrible news to her parents, who lived in another part of the country. After the death of her sister and niece, she was completely traumatized. She could no longer sleep and kept trying to contact Benny Lynn on Messenger. Benny's devastated brother wrote on social media, "We miss you so much. Ever since you left the Philippines, sis, I keep thinking about how we used to play together, how you'd make me dance. You always made us happy. We'll never forget you." While police continued digging into the background of Andrew Innes, they found that the software developer had no prior criminal record. He was born in Germany in 1970, on a military base. At 24, he moved to Dundee from Derby and worked at DMA Design on various video games after studying at University of Aberdeen. Later, he married a woman from Japan and moved there with her. They had 3 children, and for a time, the family also lived in California before eventually returning to Scotland. In 2019, the marriage broke down and he was deported from Japan back to the United Kingdom, separated from his wife and children. Andrew Innes was registered on 34 dating sites, and more disturbing details soon emerged. He was highly skilled with technology and created what's known as a scraper tool, which could be connected to different websites. It allowed him to filter results so that only women with young children would appear. He collected this data and organized it into a spreadsheet, where women were ranked by age, weight, height, and whether they had small children. The highest scores were given to women in their mid to late 20s who had young kids. After the bodies of Benny Lynn, Aquino, and Angelica were discovered, it was time for post-mortem examinations, and what they revealed was horrifying. Benny Lynn had suffered severe head injuries and internal bleeding. She had also been stabbed in the chest. It's believed she was killed on February 23rd, the same day. CCTV captured him purchasing tools and gravel. Detective Constable Paul Hardy asked Innes how long she had been under the floor. Innes answered, "She arrived last Friday. We were supposed to spend the weekend together. I saw she was messaging around 50 men on her phone. That was either Monday or Tuesday. It took me some time to break through the concrete. He insisted the crime was not planned. We argued, she came at me, I fought back, and now she's dead. There was no intent. She came at me with a sushi knife." But CCTV footage completely dismantled his version of events. He was seen at the B&Q hardware store on King's Cross Road in Dundee, where he bought the hammer he later used to kill her. He claimed he acted in self-defense, saying he feared for his life, but later changed his statement and said he had experienced an auditory hallucination. It is believed that, in fact, Benny Lynn's death happened when she was standing in the kitchen preparing food. He attacked her multiple times, striking her on the head with a hammer. Then he went into his office, took a long knife, which he himself called a samurai sword. He returned to the kitchen and struck her with it. He also slashed her arms with the blade and then again with the hammer. All of this happened in front of 7-year-old Jane Doe. After that, he wrapped Tony Benny in a construction bag, a tarp, and a blanket, and then hid him under the kitchen floor. After killing Benny, Allen kept the girl alive for the next 2 to 3 days, during which he sexually abused her. Then he killed her by squeezing her neck and covering her mouth. He wrapped her naked body in construction bags and placed it under the hallway floor next to her mother. He said that she wanted to be with her mother, and it seemed logical to him to put her with her mother. His DNA was also found on her body, and the DNA of Jessica and Innes was found in a condom in the house's trash bin. After the murders, Andrew Innes told Jane Doe that Benny, Lynn, Aquino, and Angelica were in the hospital, which is why they weren't at home. The officers who questioned him later said he seemed consumed by self-pity and showed absolutely no remorse for what he had done. Investigators also spoke with Jane Doe. She explained that Andrew Innes had what she described as a heavy hammer, and that he struck Benny Lynn in the head with it. She said, "I tried to call the police. I couldn't." She also said they had been playing hide and seek when Innes killed Angelica. "I don't know where. All I know is I was looking in the bathroom and he shut the door in front of me. Andrew Innes closed the door right in front of me, so I think it must have been in the bathroom. I should have saved them, but I couldn't. I didn't understand what was happening." While she was in that house, she endured a horrific series of rapes and sexual assaults. She said that after these attacks, when she had been handcuffed and gagged, he would give her money. One time, he gave her £2 and 10 pence. She described how he kept her captive. Andrew Innes would tie a rope from one door to another, so I couldn't open them. He was the only one who could undo it when he came back. I kept telling him, I want to go with you, because that was my only chance to get out. Andrew Innes denied the allegations of sexual abuse against Jane Doe. After his arrest, during questioning on March 5th, he stated, I never touched the girl, but later, DNA became the evidence that exposed him. DNA traces were found on clothing and on the handcuffs. Jane Doe was also diagnosed with chlamydia, and Andrew Innes had the same infection. The trial of Andrew Innes began at the High Court of Justiciary in Edinburgh on January 31st, 2023, presided over by Judge Lord Beckett.
Andrew admitted that he killed Jessica and Benny Lynn, but denied premeditated murder and referred to a state of diminished responsibility. He also denied the charges of obstructing justice and rape. On the third day of the trial, he changed his story again. Now he claimed that he became, in his words, apocalyptically enraged because Benny Lynn reminded him of both his ex-partner and his wife, from whom he was divorced. He said that from the neck down she resembled his wife and her face reminded him of his ex-partner. He also stated that his ex-partner left him in the most horrible way. She broke up with him via a text message.
I was thinking about all the awful things my wife had done to me, and I got angry about the way she treated me. I was in a rage. Crazy thoughts started running through my head. I remember stabbing her once. She was already on the floor, and I just kept hitting her until she stopped moving. In his testimony, Andrew Innes insisted the killings were not premeditated, saying, if this had been planned in advance, it would have been cleaner. He also claimed the hammer he bought wasn't a practical weapon, adding, it's absurd to think I came back with a hammer when I only went out for fuel. Innes told the court he remembered the first blow and the struggle that began in the kitchen before moving into the living room, saying, it was a level of anger I had never felt in my life. During cross-examination, he was asked what he did with the bodies, and he replied, I dug them a proper grave, buried them in a Christian way, and then put the floor back. That's all. He said he had initially planned to dispose of the bodies at sea, but later decided to hide them beneath the kitchen floor since he had already been doing renovation work there. It became clear he had a deeply controlling nature. He admitted he became extremely angry when his ex-wife got a haircut he didn't like, and he also said he once attempted to castrate himself using an electrical cord. There were moments in court when Innes broke down on the stand and cried during his testimony. Much of the trial focused on his mental state. Psychiatrist Dr. Gordon Cowan, who specializes in forensic psychiatry, met with Innes 8 times after his arrest and gave evidence on the 4th day of the trial. He explained that Innes's account had changed multiple times. First it was self-defense, then auditory hallucinations, and later a mix of different explanations. Dr. Cowan said, it's clear he harbored resentment toward his former partners, and this woman in front of him in some way reminded him of them. He became angry intensely and uncontrollably angry at her. Explaining this to the jury, he noted that Innes initially spoke about acting in self-defense after being attacked, but later described an internal monologue involving a voice, an identity that seemed to urge him to harm the woman, while he himself appeared to resist, saying, but she hasn't done anything wrong. He added, it's very difficult to say with certainty what symptoms, if any, mister, Innes was experiencing at that time. Innes had also been diagnosed with Crohn's disease, a condition that led to his hospitalization in February 2021 at Ninewells Hospital. He had been prescribed steroids to manage his symptoms. Defense lawyer Brian McConaughey asked Dr. Cowan whether Innes could have been experiencing steroid-induced psychosis, since Innes himself claimed he was not responsible due to the medication. He had been prescribed 40 milligrams per day, but the court heard that in the days leading up to the killings, he had been taking a higher dose. However, the fact that he purchased the hammer at B&Q hardware store did not fit with that theory. Dr. Cowan explained, if someone is experiencing psychosis to the extent that they are capable of committing murder, they typically don't go about their day appearing completely normal without anyone noticing. There is a degree of logic in his thinking, so I don't believe this necessarily points to psychosis.
He emphasized that although this is a rare side effect of the drug, in the previous 12 months there had not been a single patient with psychosis caused by the steroid, and most of his colleagues had never seen such a case in their entire careers. Dr. Kovan met with Innes in September 2021 in the carriage By that time, Innes had already spoken with relatives and learned about the phenomenon of steroid-induced psychosis. It was the first time he had heard of such a thing, and he decided that this might explain what had happened to him. Dr. Coven also explained that several specialists had indeed considered this diagnosis for him, autism spectrum disorder, but the judge later noted that this did not incline him toward violence and did not diminish his guilt. However, one of the most painful moments of the proceedings came when the court was shown a previously recorded interview with Jane Doe. Andrew killed Jerica. When we were playing hide and seek, she said. She added that she did not understand what was happening. She also described the horrific sexual abuse she had suffered. The nature of this evidence was so severe that the jurors were offered psychological support to help them cope with what they had seen and heard. Regarding the accusations related to Jane Doe, Andre Innes called her a liar, claiming that some parts of her story did not add up. He argued that he would not have used a sock to cover her mouth, as she claimed, because there were hundreds of other more suitable things. He said, "If I had wanted to silence that child, I would have used a real gag." Innes also told the jury that if the police had come to his house 24 hours later, they might have found her dead body next to Benny Lynn and Angelica.
After 5 days of hearings, both the prosecution and the defense wrapped up their cases. Once all the evidence had been reviewed, Judge Lord Beckett instructed the jury to find Andrew Innes guilty on both counts of murder. After just 2.5 hours of deliberation, they returned with a verdict guilty. In addition to the murders, he was also convicted of rape and sexual assault. Andrew Innes was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 36 years before he can even be considered for parole.
Woman and her 2-year-old daughter in a situation where they had trusted you and travelled with you from Bristol to your home in Dundee. These are amongst the very worst crimes which have come before the High Court of Justiciary. Considering the whole circumstances, the punishment part on the 2 charges of murder will be one of 36 years, backdated to 8th March 2021. This does not mean that this is a sentence of 36 years. You are sentenced to life imprisonment, and you will serve at least 36 years before you can be considered for release on parole. It will be for the parole board to determine whether you will ultimately be released, and they will consider the safety of the public in reaching that decision.
In almost 30 years of policing, the level of depravity shown by Andrew Innes is way beyond anything myself or my colleagues had witnessed before. Not only did he callously take the life of a young mother and innocent child, he then sought to escape justice by burying their bodies beneath his kitchen floor. He showed no regard for human life or for the remorse or suffering that he's brought to their loved ones. I'd like to end by thanking the family of Benel and Angelica for their courage they've shown throughout what's been a horrific ordeal, and I hope this conviction in some way helps to bring them a degree of closure. Thank you very much. This is probably one of the most horrific cases that I and my team have been involved in, and it's to credit to everyone involved with the commitment and professionalism they showed to secure justice for Benel and Angelica. The National Crime Agency described this as a once-in-a-generation crime, and I sincerely hope that no one else sees this ever again.
The family of Benny Lynn Aquino traveled from the Philippines to the United Kingdom for the trial. In their statement, they said what happened was the most brutal thing they could ever have imagined, and added that these horrific crimes would haunt them for the rest of their lives.
She is very much missed by the family.
Their loss incomprehensible to relatives in the Philippines. Brutal deaths that haunt a sister searching for answers. Her words translated by a friend.
So Shella is saying that in the last 2 years, it's been very difficult coping. They were in shock and traumatized by the fact that they couldn't understand why it happened.
He showed no remorse, wallowed in self-pity. The depravity that he's shown is unimaginable.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Innes after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars and will not be able to come out.
Benedicto Aquino, Benny Lynn's father, was completely devastated by the loss of his daughter and granddaughter. The grief was so overwhelming that he could no longer work. For Lexington Burke, what happened to Benny, Lynn, Aquino, and Angelica was absolutely crushing. He spoke about his anger and pain over the cruelty Andrew Innes inflicted on Angelica and the horrific violence and death she endured. It was later confirmed that Andrew Innes intends to appeal both his conviction and his sentence. The appeal was filed with the High Court of Criminal Appeal in Edinburgh. A hearing is scheduled for a later date. No application for bail has been made while the appeal is pending, and he remains in custody. Jim Gamble, CEO of the iNuke Safeguarding Group and former head of Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center, said that for an offender like Innes, it would be unusual for him not to have had previous victims. I doubt these were his only victims. Some people probably don't even realize how close they came to crossing paths with someone like this. We see it all the time. We see predators targeting single mothers, not just to manipulate and control them, but to gain access to young children. I think anyone who knows him or has known him needs to really think about what they know about him, and I'm sure the police are doing exactly that.
Scotland police reported that they had contacted law enforcement authorities in Ukraine, where he was known to have visited and also cooperated with Interpol. However, no other crimes were discovered. Benny Lynn's father said that he cries every day and still cannot come to terms with what happened. He says that he still hasn't accepted that they are gone. Her family has also started a campaign in support of the charity organization Kanlungan, which helps people from the Philippines who live in the United Kingdom, particularly those who have suffered from domestic violence and abuse. Benedicto said that he decided to dedicate his life to protecting the rights of women and children. All Benny Lynn ever wanted was to love and be loved. She made an incredibly brave decision to leave her home and move to a foreign country in hopes of a brighter future. To this day, Shella calls her sister's number just to hear her voice on the answering machine. She said she would never forget either Benny Lynn or Jellica because they would be with her wherever she went, adding, "I will always be with them too."